Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary, who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Abogo and Tay Kofi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Abogo, and my incredible co-host, the man with a voice, Tay Kofi.
That's me.
Yeah, that's
Like
you.
Good evening. Hi.
How you doing?
No, I'm good. It's amazing how quickly the week goes. It just seemed like yesterday we were sitting here.
Yeah, we were having that Carol sandwich.
Absolutely.
I absolutely adored having Carol in the studio. I mean, it was so much fun. It was so much fun just having her here.
Absolutely.
You know, the one thing about Carol that I thought was really amazing was the fact that, you know, just her presence had so much energy. You know?
So some people have a smile that lights up her whole face.
Yes.
Carol's smiles, not just from her lips, goes all the way up to her eyes.
Oh, that's...
And that's not just a plug for you to go back and look at the last show either. No, it's all true. But we're on to other things today, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We are definitely on to other things. We are looking at Hollywood, because we're in that season. We're in that season of Hollywood. We're discussing all the fun things that's about to come up. Mm-hmm. And I think let's kick off with what happened at the Grammys. Before we go into the essence of the show, where we're looking at the good, the bad, and the shades of gray of diversity and the arts. Because that's what we're talking about today. Today is diversity and the arts. And we want to know what's going on. So if you want to, take part, you want to share with us, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know if you can hear us, if you can connect with us. Let's know, because we want to know that you are out there listening. So we're talking about the diversity. We're talking about diversity and the art, and this covers a whole spectrum.
Sure. And it's not just about Hollywood. It's about where we live as well. I mean, we're based in London, but the arts is a global affair. And, of course, Hollywood is the totem pole, right at the top of the totem pole. So what happens in Hollywood casts a long shadow in the development of the arts in other places. Let's hear your comments, your issues, your concerns about diversity in the arts, wherever you are.
So let's kind of swing back, because we were touching on the whole stuff around the Grammys and how
she swept the board.
Adele just took everything home.
I saw this fantastic picture, and she was cradling all her Grammys in her arms. And how many was it? 5?
I think that was the number. Well, technically 4.5, and she gave the other bit to Beyonce.
Well, I mean that's the drama. She did very, very, very well. And of course, she's got a fantastic voice. I mean, there's no question. There's no question that she's got a great voice.
Exactly. So, and that's not what's in question. What was in question is what happened. The fact that she felt that her album should not have taken Album of the Year. And it should have been the whole Lemonade, and the fact that it should have been Beyonce. And personally speaking, I don't know. I don't know if it was an issue of race. I don't know if it's an issue of color line. But I think that the fact that the last time a person of color actually won that was Lauryn Hill.
That was a long time ago.
Children have grown people now since that.
That was a long, absolutely. So, but I think that what was really dramatic, what was very touching, I think we were talking about this, and you said that she's going to go down in the history of the Grammys with this, was that she snapped one of the Grammys and gave the head to Beyonce out of recognition of the spectacular success that Lemonade was.
Exactly. And she basically had to recognize, she felt that she needed to recognize Beyonce. But why does it take another artist to do this? Why not the industry? And this is where we are. We're in that space of looking at why are we in 2017, for goodness sake, still talking about race, still talking about the issue of color, and still talking about the fact that, people of color are not being represented or not being allowed to represent at the highest level of these awards.
Sure. Of course, the arts involves everything. Fine art, performance arts of all kinds, music, film, TV, theatre, opera, all genres of music. And, my interest is a lot more in, broadcast arts, like as in film.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll find that, some of these issues run across the whole gamut of the arts. So if you find something happening, say, for example, in film and television, it's likely to be happening in music as well. I think that there are several issues.
I mean, considering that, let's stop for a minute. And if we go back to 2015, mm-hmm. Oscar So White, mm-hmm. when basically there were literally no person of color, mm-hmm. whether black, Asian, any person that is not Caucasian, mm-hmm. was actually nominated.
But you see, the interesting thing, you see this in politics and other places, is that people kind of live in denial of how their systems work. And then all of a sudden, you get an incredible surprise when the system does what it's designed to do, or what the system does, what its default settings are, and then everybody goes out and says, "Oh my God, how can this happen?" And so on and so forth. Of course, there are always reasons.
I mean, you know what? We are talking about the system, and people will say, well, there's no such thing as, the system is colorblind. We should be all effectively, have fair stake. But we know that's not the case.
Okay. See, if I go to movies, for example, television, drama, I always have an issue with storylines, because the storyline will define the kind of characters that you're going to put out there in the movie. And if the storylines aren't right, or if the storylines are very narrow, it's very difficult to actually get people of colour involved. Now, I noticed that there are the best storylines actually seem to be historical stories, mm-hmm. because they're reality. Because when you get people trying to write dramas that reflect the way people of colour are, live, present, characterise themselves in, you just get the impression sometimes that it's somebody's writing their fantasy of what they think people look like. It's why I don't watch soaps. Because when I watch things like EastEnders, Corrie, and all the others, when I see black people, they all look weird to me. I honestly feel I've never seen a black person like, where did that come from? What planet did that descend from? What do you think?
Well, you know what? The soaps are a whole different thing, because for me, the soaps, I think they play people of color as a lowest common denominator. So they play the stereotypes out in the fullest. It's the crackhead, it's the single mom who shouts at her kid, it's the, can't keep it in your pants John, or, Jack, it's the, never faithful, never having a job.
Stereotypes.
They're playing every stereotype out, and then you then understand why.
That's why I don't watch them.
But I don't know anybody like that.
Well, exactly. I actually don't know anybody like that. And it looks really quite weird, to me. So, but I think it's significant that if this is happening at the level of the soap, which is the thing which has the greatest total audience, something that people have fed every day, it does then tend to influence the supply chain into the industry. Because if there are lots of real parts for people of colour, then you are likely to kind of bring through the talent, and you are likely to find storylines going into major features as well, which reflect these realities.
But here's the thing, with these storylines where the black woman or the brown woman is playing a certain type, is playing a certain level, and then all of a sudden, the narrative is that women of color cannot be leading ladies. And I guess our women of color who are doing their thing with hidden numbers have actually said, no, that's not the case.
But then that's interesting, because Hidden Figures.
Yeah, Hidden Figures, yeah.
Yeah, same thing, because it's all about number crunching. And I'm going to be very careful because I've actually watched it twice. It was that good.
I'm actually watching it tomorrow night.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've got to be very careful with the spoilers and so on. But
spoilers alert. No spoilers.
Okay. Yeah. So the point is that this was based on reality. This was based on something that actually happened in history.
Yes.
And so the narrative works. The storyline absolutely works. Another movie that worked very well for me because it was based on reality was the first black regiment of horsemen, of soldiers. I think the movie was called Glory with Denzel Washington quite a long time ago.
I haven't seen that.
Incredible movie. But again, that was telling something that actually really happened. Nobody had to make it up. Then there's another one with the movie about the Tuskegee Airmen, where they had this squadron of P-45 Mustang pilots who absolutely nobody, and they're all black men, of course. This was the first black squadron of fighter pilots. First of all, the blacks weren't supposed to be clever enough to fly fighter planes. They weren't supposed to be courageous enough to do that kind of job. Anyway, long story short, by the end, the flying fortresses, the American bombers, refused to fly over Germany unless they were being escorted by these people. Because when the Tuskegee Airmen were escorting them through, their losses were almost zero.
Wow.
When any other squadron was escorting them, a lot of planes get shot down by the enemy fighters and so on. So again, I mean, this isn't something anybody's making up. It's a matter of history. So when they do that kind of story, all you have to do is to actually build characters around facts that already exist. People don't struggle with that so much.
Yeah, okay, so fair enough. I mean, but the fact is, we still have cases where movie parts, whether real or fiction, are still being given away to non-people of color. I mean, we will go back to the yellow face protest. We spoke about it a few weeks ago. Because the fact of the matter, it's still happening. We looked at that article today that showed all the characters that had been whitewashed. And nobody complained. But I still remember people losing their damn minds when, with not Divergent, Hunger Games, where the little girl was biracial and people literally lost their mind. No, that's not how she's supposed to look. Oh my God, they have a black girl playing this character.
There was a film called, actually a TV series called Undercover, starring Sophia Kennedy and Adrian Lester.
Oh, Sophia Kennedy let's start there. She is an incredible actress.
My goodness. This thing had me sat bolt upright. And I must say, it's probably the first program, series I've seen where I thought, I know a woman just like that. She played a barrister. She was actually a lawyer. Adrian Lester. I actually know, in this case, he was a spook. He was more than a cop. He was a spook. But I actually know a cop who presented like that, with the same kind of fitness, and the hobbies and so on. Then I saw the children. Now, the woman is a very senior lawyer. The guy is a relatively he's a middle-level cop, but quite high level for the fact that he's doing highly strategic, sensitive, secret stuff. And their children, now one of their kids has gotten into Oxford.
Right.
Now, okay, so I'm not saying that if you go up and down kind of Brixton, you're going to find every other kid who's rocking up at Oxford or Cambridge or whatever. But the truth is, I know so many kids who were just like these people's children. I thought, oh my goodness, here is a representation of people like me. So, but I think, so it takes, if people make the effort, they can write stories that reflect the reality you, I, Nicoletta, who's sitting patiently, arms crossed over there, off camera. We couldn't do this without, of course.
Of course not.
People who we know. And for me, that's the bottom line. Are these characters credible or are they not credible? So that's an example that you don't have to follow real life. You can actually write a dramatic script that works.
Yeah, okay. So we're saying we don't have to follow real life. Let's take a couple of things. Nobody exactly knows what Cleopatra looks like. However, according to Hollywood, she is Caucasian,
Liz Taylor's the ultimate Cleopatra.
Exactly.
As I remember from my childhood. I don't know.
She's Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
Really? The fact that Elizabeth Taylor, as beautiful as she was...
It's so interesting because this thing morphs in... Sorry.
But let's call a spade a spade. Egypt, geographically, is North Africa. Elizabeth has no North African blood. What stops Hollywood investing in actors to play those roles? I mean, Othello, classic. Let's use Othello. How many times have actors actually blacked up to play that? And that's, okay, we're reaching back. Let's kind of reach forward into today. We still have people playing actors where they have to play outside their race. You're like, okay.
Well, it's this goes back to my business kind of background. Is that you've got to build the capacity. If you don't build the capacity, when the time comes for somebody to play the big part, everybody will say, well, there's nobody here because there's nobody with sufficient experience.
Exactly.
And why is there nobody here with sufficient experience? It's because the opportunities have not been given. And why have the opportunities not been given? Which is the second, something we ought to kick around a little bit later. It's that the people who need to be given the opportunities are outside all the networks. The only reason I got an in to broadcasting was because I landed on my feet and I was mentored by somebody who was very, very, very well known at the BBC. Stroke of luck. And he didn't find me scary, because most other people did. This guy was so confident that he just kind of took me under his wing and he taught me a lot of tricks. Now, if you're not included in those kind of networks, if somebody isn't there to hold your hand, you haven't got a chance in hell. Who did Jimi Hendrix play for before he became who he was? Guess.
Who?
James Brown.
Really?
A lot of people don't know this.
No, seriously.
No, absolutely. Jimi Hendrix used to play the rhythm guitar behind James Brown at the back. And he learned a lot of tricks. Of course, he is supremely talented as well. But it does help if you've got the right guy holding your hand. And he had the Godfather. So, all of this gives you a better chance, a better crack. And it seems that Hollywood has a set of insiders, and if it's using a football metaphor, they just pass the ball to each other. And I think that what the public have to clamour for and support the people within the trade with is to say, well, look, let other people into the inside track, pass the ball to some of these other people.
You know what, I think you're kind of touching on something about this whole network and being inside, but also, as much as we're saying that, Hollywood, or the industry, whether on what side of the Atlantic it is not recognizing people of color to play the parts, whether it's, playing someone of First Nation, whether it's playing an Asian role, whether it's playing a Japanese role. There's also the fact that there's sometimes that we, as a people, and I'm using the royal we here, actually keep ourselves outside these areas of arts, because we then exclude ourselves by distinction. Oh, well, that's not for us. Ballet, what are you talking about? We don't do that. Opera, same. Who goes to opera? Upper what?
Yeah, it's really interesting. You mentioned opera. There's actually something called the Black British Classical Foundation, the BBCF. They hold biannual heats and competitions to find an operatic talent.
But we don't hear about that.
Absolutely, we don't hear about it. Now, the last one to be discovered was a black lady called Elizabeth Llewellyn.
Okay.
She did La Boheme. Sadler's Wells.
That's a difficult thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so, you see, but the point is that, why should it take so much effort to shoehorn just one person full marks to the to the BBCF. That's the Black British Classical Foundation. 4 marks to them. They're pushing. But also, you see, I feel with these things that we need to give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. There are bits of responsibility nobody can take for my community. And there are bits of responsibility that I cannot take for the mainstream. Is that the right word?
Yeah, so what you're trying to say...
Each person should carry their burden. Each person should do what they need to do.
So let's dial it down. What you're really saying is people need to pull their finger out and stop excluding themselves from certain things.
Well,
I'm sorry, pull your finger out of your,
sure.
and actually start supporting you.
But you see, I mean, of course, with these things, I think you cannot do this on a whimsy. You need to have a sense of mission and purpose about what you're doing. Because throughout the history of these things, other groups have been able to get into people of colour and their culture.
Yeah.
And take it on.
Of course.
I mean, I think kind of rhythm and blues.
I think the word you're looking for is appropriation.
Exactly.
And then when you appropriate, it becomes mainstream.
Right.
And in itself,
But the other way doesn't work around. It doesn't work the other way around. And I think that to bring about that situation does require talented people with a sense of mission. It does require a community that's asking for it. I nearly said gagging for it.
That's a different show, Tate. That's a different show.
But you need a community that's gagging for it and everybody talking about it.
But we're going back to the same point. We're going back to the same point that we exclude ourselves. We actually say, no, this is not for us, so we don't do it. I mean, I remember seeing Porgy and Bess. Mm-hmm. Now, I remember being in the audience, and I could actually count how many people of color were in the audience. Mm-hmm. I remember going to the Black Ballet. Mm-hmm. I could count how many people of color were in.
Well, I think that's entirely a matter of education. I mean, my son plays the viola, and it costs money to get him, to pay for the lessons. My daughter played the violin. I learned the piano and later the trombone. My sister played guitar and organ, So that, and all of that stemmed from the fact that my father used to play the organ.
Right.
And so kind of music, you had to do something. Whether you had any talent, you had to try something, and it was, so we all had at least 3 or 4 years of some kind of thing. And of course, none of us carried it through, but at least I'm sufficiently savvy now to go to the opera. I got opera on my iPad.
But, but here's the thing that I really want to go back to this. A friend of mine, I had this discussion with her, and she goes that the reason why that it seems that we exclude ourselves from these areas of the arts is simply because it's so liberal that you need to, as we'll say, as the Nigerians will say when, you break it down, you need to chop belly-full before you start to look for the arts.
Sure.
You need, meaning that you need to quit, but you need to quit surviving, you need to have, settled necessary before you start looking for the arts.
Lillian, this is a crucial point, and I am an unashamed advocate for the arts. Because people think that the arts are an optional extra. Actually, I disagree.
I think, the word you're looking for is bougie. Okay. It's a bougie extra.
Okay.
Because if you start enjoying the arts, no. You're basically trying to act white.
I see. Okay.
Did I just say that out loud?
Well, it's a Shine Out Loud show.
My bad.
but you see, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the arts have only one thing in mind, have one great benefit. Arts civilize any human being. It is the arts that even the caveman was drawing on the cave.
They say music suits the savage beast.
So this idea that, the arts is only for when, everything is satisfied and so on. The arts can even help you go through hardship.
When you're bougie climbing, then you can enjoy the arts.
Yeah, well, I think it's a huge mistake. I wish some of the kids who are getting in trouble in inner city areas had a better education in arts. And of course, it's all being cut back at the moment.
Of course, that's deliberate. Yeah. Because when you don't understand the history of music, when you don't understand you almost touched on something about, the history of music going back to the slaves, when it was used to communicate information to one another, when it was used to uphold one another. Yeah. And you know what? On the flip side of all this, when you think about how we hold a perception and we say, well, this is not for us, that's not for us, that's for somebody else. These perceptions are horrid because my new favorite, and I don't know whether I should still use this term, blue-eyed soul person, when you look at him, he looks like a headbanger about to, head down the headbanger's ball or, some heavy metal. And it's rag and bone. And when this guy opens his mouth, to sing, he transcends, and you're like,
that's it.
You have a face that says, nah, now I'm foolish.
Yes.
Because when you listen to talent should be colorblind. Talent and art should not, we should still not be having those conversations. But because we are where we are, we have to have those conversations. We have to say, we belong everywhere.
I think it's very important. I mean, it leads to the impoverishment of any human being if any aspect of their cultural or social life is so inhibited. And I think there are two sides to this thing. I think there is a social mean, there's a social climate which tries to put those limitations down. And once those limitations are put down, there is a tendency for people to actually imbibe it and internalize it. And both need to stop.
So we're kind of dancing around this space, and we have a lot to talk about. I mean, we could do this for days. The whole thing is that there's the good, the bad, the ugly of the industry. There's the, where we still in 2017 have to talk about, actors playing real life figures outside of their own race. I mean, the movie with Angelina Jolie, now, give Angelina her due, but she played the biracial woman who was biracial Cuban or Afro-Cuban, whose husband was actually kidnapped in Pakistan and later on killed. Are they not biracial women in the world who are actually qualified actresses? I mean, let's even make this more specific. This is quite recent. Now, Zoe Saldana, woman can act. She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. She is no Nina Simone. She is no Nina Simone in essence, because to play Nina Simone, Nina Simone was a dark woman of color. Do you see the disparity?
Oh, absolutely.
But yet, the notion is that that woman who looks like Nina Simone would not be able to draw a crowd.
Well, she wouldn't be able to draw a crowd because the persona hasn't been created for her, because the platform doesn't exist for her, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that the woman who looks like her will not be able to pull a crowd. But, if you give it a particular name and box it and package it a particular way, it can become a completely self-fulfilling prophecy. I've watched a couple of new kind of dramatic series. Even in the world of fantasy, have you heard of Luke Cage?
Of course.
Yeah,
yes.
Luke Cage. All right. Now, it was my kids said, you're going to go and watch Luke Cage. And after a couple of promises and a couple of reminders, I decided that I would look. I was absolutely staggered. Now, it's obviously a fantasy story, kind of in the Marvel thing.
Yeah, it's an action. Yeah.
Action fantasy story. But, nevertheless, within this fantasy genre, I saw characters living with issues and living with kind of moral dilemmas that I recognize as happening to people I know and people like them in the world today. So here's the thing. It can be done, but you got to have the will. And I keep coming back to this thing, is that the will is a two-way thing. The will is the clamoring of the people for it. If the people shut up and don't talk about it, if we don't have this conversation and share it with other people, and those people don't talk about it, it's never going to happen. Not in a year of Sundays.
No, it's not. I mean, the fact that we are having the new Black Panther movie that's coming out with an all-colored cast. All people of color are in that movie. The fact that even more, more movies are coming out where actually slowly the look of the lead is changing.
Now, here's a funny... I'm sorry. You want to flow. Get bland.
Just interrupted. But what we were saying is that we need to... I'm going to go back to my original point. We need to pull our fingers out and support. You can't sit back at the same time saying, well, they're not putting on that platform for us to be seen and recognized. But when it happens, you sit at home and don't go, or you pirate stuff. And so you need to support. You need to be part of that story.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say something about Hidden Figures. Did you know that, how many Oscars has La La Land been?
I think we're...
It's 14.
Yeah, 14.
That is an all-time record.
That is a huge record.
You're the keeper of the records. Is it true?
Kind of. But 14.
Like Titanic.
Yeah, 14. 14 nominations. But what's really funny is that, the other movie?
What, Hidden Figures?
Yes.
Well, it's actually the biggest grossing...
Has outgrossed them.
The biggest grossing launch movie. And how many Oscars has that been? 4.
4 to 14.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's...
So, I mean, it just goes to show, if you get the right product and, you do it right, most of all the important characters, it's a story about 3 black women who were involved in the NASA program. And there is one scene, that will haunt me for the rest of my, I know I'll never forget the scene for the rest of my life. And it's the only kind of quarter spoiler. It's called the loo break scene. Look out for the loo break scene.
We did say no spoiler.
No, this isn't a spoiler at all, but look out for the loo break scene. I couldn't believe it. It had my stomach in a knot. And as I watched the story, a film is landing when you're looking at them and you're thinking, oh my God, I couldn't do that. I couldn't live through this. Because you're completely engaged. And I defy anybody who has blood running through their veins, viz, if you're a human being. I defy anybody with blood running through their veins to watch that and not be moved.
But here's the thing. I haven't seen it, so I can't really speak to it, but what I want to say about that movie, for me personally, it actually debunks a couple of myths. It debunks the fact that we don't support, which even though we have mentioned that there is a support issue, it debunks the fact that women of color cannot be leading ladies. These women led... Oh, God, I'm trying to find the...
We just got to write a story for them.
Exactly. We have got to make the room for these stories to be seen. These women were beyond exceptional. I've seen the trailers, I've seen clips, I've seen interview pieces about them. The fact is, that movie actually struck a chord because for me, as a little closet geek, I didn't know that we have women of color in the science programs, in the NASA program. I didn't know that we had men of color, work in those programs. I mean, if you watch Apollo 13, the contrast between Apollo 13 to this movie is that Apollo 13 barely had anybody of color show. Let's not forget that. So we should hold Apollo 13 alongside it and say, well, why didn't you tell us?
How long ago was Apollo 13 made? Quite a few years.
Oh, very. You know.
It just goes to show how far the game has moved. But the other thing is that, okay, so these women were people of extraordinary human qualities.
Yeah.
I mean, they had guts. Actually, more guts than most men could muster. Not that guts is a gender specific thing, but they were gutsy people. Well, so, and the second thing about them was that they presented just like women I know everywhere. The same issues, the same, I mean, their wit, they did lots of things that I recognize women do as women. So again, it's got to be part of the success story that the characters has put on the screen were incredibly real. They weren't kind of somebody sitting down and thinking, ooh, I wonder how black women behave and wonder what they'd say. Because a lot of the movies I've seen, as I said, top of the hour, they look like
caricatures. The word you're looking for is a caricature of what a black woman or a black person should be.
Sure.
What a Native American is supposed to be like. Yeah. It's a caricature.
Well, it's somebody's fantasy of what they're supposed to be. And of course, you don't recognise any of them because it's all in their heads.
But I think, you know what, we're at a good point. Let's kind of pause for a moment because we need to actually look at our So Loud moment for today, for the week. What's our So Loud moment?
Mine's clear. I've watched it twice. The So Loud moment is Hidden Figures. This movie is a must-watch for everybody.
The movie.
The movie. It's very, 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 very powerful. Not many movies are going to leave me with bits kind of embedded in my head for a long time to come. So it's definitely hidden. For me, it's Hidden Moments. Hidden Figures.
We seem to be having issues with this name. Hidden Moments, Hidden Figures.
Hidden Numbers. You went Hidden Numbers.
I went Hidden Numbers. I went Hidden Numbers. So, but Hidden Figures is one of those movies that I think, like you said, everyone needs to see it. Yeah. And I think, the fact that it should be seen in schools. It should be shown in schools. It should be shown to young black girls globally. Because...
And not just black girls. I mean, it should be shown to women.
Exactly.
Because there's the whole theme of women in technology.
That's a whole different section. Because the reason why I say that is because there seems to be this drive when you speak to young girls in high school, when you speak to young girls in, secondary school, especially here, there seems to be a push for women to be social workers and nurses. Social worker, nurses.
Is important.
And I'm not saying these careers are not important,
Sure.
but can we, for goodness sake, stop driving young women there? Because women can be techpreneurs. I mean, there's a young woman who went from banker to creating her own food app that services, ethnic foods. So, can we stop pushing young girls into only these areas, because these little sections are not enough. We need women in tech. We need women in science. We need women in IT. We need more women who are out there as founders and creators. And I think in the last we're in the second month since coming up to the end of 2016. The amount of tech savvy women that are standing up and showing up of all color.
We're going to have one on the show in about 3 weeks' time.
Exactly. And we're going to be talking about the Naturalist app, which is about natural hair and natural beauty. And I'm thinking, we need more of these women. Yeah. We need to.
And she's done very, very, very well in a field, tech, which is dominated and has been dominated by men for a very long time. So again, we're back to this old shibboleth of stereotypes and putting people in boxes. It's like trying to put, a gallon of water into a 2-pint pot. It's not going to happen. Yeah, it's just too small. It's too restrictive.
And you know what? Let's just stop allowing this narrative that there's some place we people of color, again, I'm using that royal we, cannot go. We need to really get off that one, because the more we restrict ourselves, the more we give credence to the nonsense. The more we say, oh, no, that's not for us. Oh, no.
Do you remember Lupita Nyong'o?
No.
12 Years a Slave?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And how Steve McQueen, again, it was a networking thing. Steve happened to meet Brad Pitt. If he hadn't met Brad Pitt at the right time in the right place to have that conversation, 12 Years a Slave would never have happened.
Well, I think that movie was pivotal.
Yeah, but Steve he was also, I know him, he was also incredibly focused, incredibly determined. And this speaks to this business of somebody telling you you don't belong. So I've known Steve since he was quite young. And from the age of about 10, he was into computer games and movies. He was always going to do something like this. But again, he seems to have the sense of purpose. And I think people need to kind of nurture that sense of purpose as well. So that when somebody says no, they know that no is not now.
But, I think we need to also get past the idea that somehow there's somebody standing at the door judging us before we get there. I think that's the first thing we need to start getting past. Is that, well, they're going to judge me if I show up. So I'm going to...
Not bother. That one.
Yes. That old
yes. Yes. Well, I think that's a kind of life philosophy issue. It really is. It's a mentality thing. And whether it's in movies or whether it's in tech or whether it's in finance or whether it's in love, whenever somebody else owns your reality, whenever you're acting as a marionette for somebody's pulling your strings, somebody's determining what you can and can't do, you're on a loser, because you will never be who you're going to be. You can't become who you're going to be. You're going to become the caricature that the person who's pulling your strings is going to tell you. And I think that, how did we get into politics? Because that's just where I'm about to go. But I look at the political situation now, and I think that as Trump continues, POTUS, as we head towards Brexit and so on, it seems clear to me that a lot of what is happening now is happening because people didn't speak openly and frankly. Because people censored a lot of their speech and had their speech censored. And unfortunately, if somebody censors your speech and tells you not to talk about your reality for long enough, after a while, you start censoring your speech. They won't have to tell you to censor your speech. You won't raise the issues that really matter. And I look back now and I think that there were many things. I have the opportunity through media to write stuff and do things. And I thought, this caused too many ructions and so on and so forth. The big takeaway from all of this, it is more important to speak your truth than anything else.
Okay, so you've said it. We have to own that truth. We have to change that narrative. And we have to actually start looking at what else is actually possible for us. And again, maybe we need to be the one at the helm of the creation. So we need more Steve McQueen. We need more people who are actually being the ones creating those narratives. We need to be behind the camera. We need to be the ones saying, this is what we want to see. This is what we want to create.
See, I think that the most interesting thing, and I can say this now because I've been, kicking around a while, is that when you act on your truth, nothing happens. The world doesn't end. You don't die. And people seem to think that something awful is going to happen if they dare to step outside the box that somebody has drawn for them. Actually, I don't think so. In fact, you may just be doing society a favour. You may just be doing society a favour because you're not making up your truth. So long as what you're doing is based on a natural ambition with respect for other people's lives, I don't think there's any cause to hold back. But of course, it takes courage.
And that's the key. It takes courage. But we've actually gone so many different places today. We were just supposed to be looking at Hollywood and Oscars so white, the Grammys, the fact that even though that, in the last few years there've been that whole concept and talk about, leading ladies figures, women are not being paid as much as men, the gender gap. But the one thing they're not talking about is that the pay may have gone up for women, but not for women of color. There, articles from the economic magazine, there's so many different places that are pointing out that we're still not getting equal pay. We're still not being equally represented. We're still not being seen. And it's not, again, when I use this royal blanket, I'm of color, I mean black, Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Hawaiians, First Natives, are not being represented. So we still need to keep lighting that flag and say, we need to talk about this.
Well, I think that's why things like the Shine Out Loud show is important, because the idea for me in part is to give people the voice, the platform that they may not have had before. And that's why also I'm really keen to engage with other people's tweets, their communications, their feedback, and so on and so forth. Because until you ask for it, it won't be given.
Exactly.
Or until you want it, nothing is going to be created.
So, you know what? This is a good time for people to tweet in and share with us what they think. Tweet in their questions at Shine Out Show. In fact, or tweet us directly. Tweet me at Lillian Abogo and tweet Tate at Tate Kofi.
At Tet Kofi. T-E-T Kilo Oscar Foxtrot India. K-O-F-I. There you go.
So now you have no excuse not to tweet in.
Yeah. Now, what was it? There was something else that came to mind. Yes, back to the whole idea of taboo arts. I've seen the Albanese show, the dancers, on a couple of occasions. It absolutely, totally blew my mind. They were so talented in the area of modern dance. And again, black people don't get involved in ballet.
No,
now, I'm not saying...
Have I not said to you it's bougie?
Yeah. It's not... I don't know. I mean, ballet is something with... I actually did ballet lessons. It is the most amazing... Don't knock it. I go to the ballet classes.
Wait. I am not knocking. I'm just saying this is the notion out there that ballet is some kind of bougie nonsense.
No. It's not. I tell you what. But if a guy who's in their 40s has hypertension and you go along to a ballet class, you can drop your blood pressure in a very short period of time. I'm not making that up. And when you walk outside of that class and you walk onto the street, you feel incredibly virtuous because everybody else around you looks like a snob, looks like a slob. So here's the thing and actually when you go in there, I wasn't the only person of colour in there at all.
Right.
But, ballet is what it is, but it is the most fantastic physical exercise regime for people. Don't knock it. Nothing should be, it's done by human beings. It's not done by parakeets or koala bears or meerkats or tigers.
Somehow I don't want to see the meerkats doing ballet. I just know I don't know. I don't. I think they've done enough. But no, seriously, we need to be in that position to actually say there's no doors closed to us. So I think, we're coming up to wrapping this up, and I think we should actually do this on a regular basis, where we just actually sit down and talk about topics that, we want to get into. Sure.
Things which are interesting. It's good. But the other thing is that, you might pick a particular topic, but nothing is hermetic in life. Everything is connected to everything else. And there is a political dimension, there's a social dimension, there's a philosophical dimension to everything. So, nothing is taboo. nothing is off the table because all of it is to do with human life.
Yeah. And we need to keep talking. I mean, till we find that we have opened those doors, we are constantly being seen and represented, and we don't have to leave our shores before we can be seen and represented. I mean, look at the UK has lost so many incredible talent to the United States. In fact, I think UK's biggest export is black talent to the United States at the moment.
Yeah, there are so many lead roles in there, in Homeland, in the Walking Dead, and so on. Luther, of course, Luther was that was fantastic. And it's all because what it does is that it shows that there's just a lack of creativity in the United Kingdom for these people. There's that young Asian lady who was in The Good Wife. Do you know the one I mean?
I've seen The Good Wife a couple of times, so I am not sure.
She is absolutely.
I'm gonna have to go back to Netflix and take a look.
Well, she is a stunning actress, and I think I saw her in one or a couple of police series, 2 episodes of a police series, and then she disappears, goes off to America, and lands this major role in this incredible Archie Punjabi.
She is gorgeous.
And she plays the private investigator for the firm of lawyers. And the character she comes across with is sassy, dangerous, sexy, mendacious, cunning, sly, hard, gritty, warm, kind, loving. It is such a multifaceted character.
So a well-rounded human being.
Oh, absolutely. So, but again, if you don't give her the parts, of course, you'll never know what Archie Punjabi is capable of doing. Top actress.
And that's the thing. We cannot blame any of these actors for stepping out and saying, bye to the UK, let's go to where they will appreciate us slightly better.
No. Yeah. Well, I always think that this is another great function of this Shine Out Loud show, is that, we can consider what opportunities we can create for ourselves right here in the United Kingdom. Charity starts at home.
Okay, I agree. So we're going to be back same time next week, we're going to have some interesting people rolling through in the next few weeks. So It's going to be very, very interesting.
Watch the social media. We'll keep you updated.
Okay. Thank you all for listening. This is Lily Nabogo and the awesome, ever awesome Tate Kofi.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
You've been listening to the Shine Out Loud show. If you want to connect with us or let us know what you thought of today's show, be sure to follow us on Twitter @ShineOutShow.